Stardew Valley is a popular indie game in which you leave behind your unfulfilling office job and move to the countryside to become a farmer and live that gay millennial pandemic fantasy. You see, everyone in Stardew Valley is bi. I can romance all the bachelors and bachelorettes in the village regardless of what gender I play as, which also makes the player character bisexual by default. Look, here I am wooing Leia as a woman, and of course she has an ex-girlfriend, but since we're all bi here, if I play as a guy and date Leia, she still has an ex-girlfriend. Wait, what? Wait, if I'm a woman, she has an ex-girlfriend, and if I'm a man, she has an ex-boyfriend. Well, what the heck is going on here? It looks like we have no choice but to spend an hour talking about bisexuality in video games. I'm gonna get bullied by gamers for this, aren't I? The reason I'm able to romance regardless of gender in Stardew Valley is because it utilizes bisexuality as a game mechanic, which means the sexuality of the romanceable characters are molded to suit the player. This player-sexual mechanic goes back decades, beginning with the original Sims and Fable. The Sims was released in 2000, the same year Will and Grace and Dawson's Creek showed the first primetime televised kisses between two men, a time before any country in the world had legalized same-sex marriage. In a groundbreaking move, The Sims allowed for two men or two women to share an attraction, move in together, have a kid, and even just straight up make out on screen. This made The Sims probably the most progressive LGB game to date. 4 years later, Fable followed suit. You, playing as the male hero, could romance both men and women. As awesome as this was, neither game had managed true equality. In The Sims, same-sex couples could move in together, but they couldn't get married. Fable only gave you the special wedding cutscene if you were a straight couple. During the development of The Sims, the creators flip-flopped on whether there should be same-sex romance in the game. In the beginning, if the player tried to initiate same-sex flirting, the character you were hitting on would slap you. Game designer Don Hopkins developed a system which could include same-sex romance options, making gay, bi, and asexual Sims. It was still up in the air as to whether they should include this system when a new programmer, Patrick J. Barrett III, was given an older game document which included same-sex relationships, and not knowing about the debate behind the scenes, he went ahead and worked on that system, reintroducing it into development. Overall, the company wasn't happy with The Sims. The game was predicted to flop and was close to being cancelled. There was a lot of pressure on the developers for the first live demo at the E3 Game Expo, and they were told to make sure that the game characters would be on their best behaviour. But Barrett's programming had been forgotten about by the big day, and despite all the Sims being on their best behaviour, two women Sims had fallen in love and suddenly started making out on screen. It was a huge deal which got a lot of attention and launched the game into becoming one of the biggest games of the year. At that point, there was no going back. The public had seen the gayness. Developers decided to keep it, and the franchise only got gayer with every subsequent title. Similarly, Fable hadn't planned on allowing same-sex relationships, but discovered that's just what happens when you program everyone to be attracted to the hero. Lucky for us, developers felt it would be a waste of time to write the extra code to remove same-sex attraction and just decided to go with it. Nowadays, bisexual game mechanics are a standard in the industry, seen in games such as Skyrim, Assassin's Creed, Fallout, Saints Row, and Divinity. Bisexuality can be rough here in the real world. It can be difficult to accept yourself, to deal with the discourse, with dating, with constantly being asked to prove yourself. Video game NPCs just don't care. No one in Stardew Valley is going to ask you to prove you're really bi, including the potentially bi characters who fall in love with you. Sexual fluidity is often so innate to the games you play that it wouldn't really make sense for the narrative to call it out. As game writer Victoria Rose once said, being bisexual is not easy. Being bisexual in video games is less not easy. The bi game mechanic is the most common form of LGBT representation in contemporary gaming. GLAD has even nominated games which employ this mechanic for Outstanding Video Game of the Year, including Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Valhalla, and The Sims Mobile. In a world where bisexual representation is often sorely lacking, seeing bisexuality as the default in a whole medium and seeing dozens upon dozens of bisexual main characters and romance options is amazing. But how come when it feels like bisexuals are not taken seriously in other mediums and, real life, is this bisexual mechanic so successful and popular in gaming? Well, if we look back at Stardew Valley and the character Leia, it kind of seems like maybe this is not for bisexuals at all. Leia is mechanically bisexual, but in the gameplay she's only ever either gay or straight. Is that true for all the Stardew Valley NPCs? Most of them have the exact same dialogue regardless of your gender, but a few will briefly comment on their gay love for you. Abigail says she didn't know she liked other girls before she met you. Sebastian admits he's never felt this way about other guys, but that you're different. Elliot will comment on how he didn't know if you would have feelings for another man, and Alex will tell you he tried to suppress his feelings for you at first. So Elliot already knew he was queer and had the queer dilemma of, am I crushing on a straight person? That makes sense. The jock with the homophobic granddad struggled with his same-sex attraction. That makes sense. But then, you're telling me that Sebastian and Abigail didn't know they were bi? The goth girl and the emo guy didn't know they were bi? We know what you've been looking at on that computer all day, Sebastian. It's just unrealistic. I'll accept that you can raise a dinosaur on your farm, but the emo guy not questioning his sexuality? It's fake news, bitch. Whatever gender you play as, you'll get 6 potentially gay love interests in the village, but you won't hear a word about how gay this place is if you play the game straight. Elliot, the flaming artsy writer gay, won't mention his sexuality at all if you romance him as a woman, and neither will anyone else. A homophobic straight person could easily play this game and have no idea there's any gay content in it at all. But of course the game is also customized to fit into a very gay vision of Stardew as well. I didn't know I liked other girls until I met you. I've never felt this way about another guy. I didn't know if you would have feelings for another man. I thought you can't have these kinds of feelings for another guy. While I could totally headcanon these as bisexual coming outs, given the situation with Leia, I think they're meant to make the characters gay. Leia's ex is built into her narrative and programmed to change gender based on yours. She is mechanically bisexual in the sense that you can romance her regardless of whether you play as a man or a woman, but her mechanical bisexuality actually makes her invariably monosexual, either gay or straight. So as bi as Stardew seems at first glance, this is actually a pretty monosexual game, which is good for sales. You want to be able to sell your game to both homophobes and gay people, but homophobic and queer gamers aren't really offered an equal experience. If we look at the rest of Stardew Valley, all the non-romanceable NPCs are in straight relationships. There are no same-sex couples in the village, and no one expresses any queer feelings unless you're gay romancing them. You don't get a gay experience unless you specifically seek out that experience, shielding anyone from it who doesn't want to see it. This is what researchers have called opt-in gay content, or the gay button. On the surface, the game is straight, and gay content can only be accessed if you choose to and make an effort to seek it out. If the player needs to push a gay button to see same-sex relationships in games, then anyone who doesn't know or is unaware that the button exists can continue to consume the heteronormative dominated texts. Don't get me wrong, I love The Sims, I adore Stardew Valley, but the burden of representation in many of these games is placed on the player. It's not entirely dissimilar to queerbaiting in TV and film. Good neoliberal subjects are responsible for themselves and thus are responsible for their own media representation. This can be seen with other media in how queer reading practices have been traditionally utilized by readers and viewers even though the content itself might not be particularly or explicitly queer. Subtle messages or subtext are used to draw in queer audiences who can see themselves in the signals the writers are sending them without actually making the LGBT content explicit and alienating their heterosexual cis audiences. It's your job to make that gay reading more so than the producers to portray it. In games, this can be taken one step further since the medium literally allows for different players to see different content. And once again, LGBT content is only there for those who seek it out. So in a sense, the gay button is just a more explicit form of queerbaiting. And in this context, there's a kind of bi-baiting in that the burden to see bisexuality in these characters is on you. While researching for this video, we found heated discussions online about whether or not Life is Strange is truly a sapphic game, with one side being like, there's basically no lesbian content at all, while queer fans angrily reply, what an embarrassing way to admit you've romanced Warren. But babes, you've both been played by the game. Life is Strange can be sapphic if you make it sapphic, but all the queer content is optional. Here's what's not optional. Warren having a crush on you, Chloe's mum talking about her past with guys, Chloe carrying condoms, Chloe expressing attraction to Max's teacher. All the unavoidable stuff is straight. The one gay thing you can't avoid is Chloe asking you to kiss her, but she does it as a dare, which feels very different from the more emotionally charged potential kiss with the guy. And even if you choose to kiss her, she'll claim plausible deniability by pulling the girl-on-girl action doesn't count if it's done for the male gaze angle. This game is trying very hard not to step on any heterosexual toes, guys. You also learn about Rachel, a girl from Chloe's past. They had an ambiguous relationship, and the creators of the game acknowledged that it's up to your choice and interpretation whether they were friends or girlfriends. You know what's not up to interpretation? Rachel having had a boyfriend. Look, while talking to him, you even get to decide how gay or straight the relationship between Chloe and Rachel was. So while Chloe, Max, and Rachel are often praised as canonically bisexual characters, in reality Chloe and Rachel can be either straight or bi, depending on your choice, and the protagonist Max can be either gay, straight, or bi, again, depending on what you want. The creative director of Fable was also honest about how it helped them appease two demographics at once while avoiding controversy. Post-release, we've had very positive reactions from many members of the gaming community. This seems entirely logical. In Fable, if you don't agree with playing as a gay man or gay weddings, you don't play as a gay character. Simple, really. Fable doesn't force you to confront these issues, it merely allows you a game space to project your own personality into. As successful as it has been, sometimes shoving mechanical bisexuality into your game to rake in that pink dollar can backfire. Assassin's Creed is popular for sweet-ass stealth and parkour gameplay. Set in various historical locations, you play the game through a descendant of the main character. Their genetic memory allows you to relive what has already happened. Assassin's Creed was never a role-playing game. You were never able to change the outcome of the historical events you were playing, but how you made them happen was up to you, which still gave the player a satisfying amount of freedom. However, in 2018, Ubisoft announced that the next installment of the series, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, set in ancient Greece, would be a full-blown RPG with choice at the center of everything, including interactive dialogues, a choice to play as either the male or female sibling, the ability to impact history with 9 different game endings, and of course, romance, including same-sex romance, enabled by bisexuality as a game mechanic, justified by the setting of ancient Greece. Ubisoft got a lot of attention and praise for this, until the release of the Shadow Heritage expansion, which forced you to heterosexually settle down and have a child. Ooh, so what happened there then? Why is Ubisoft trying to heterosexualize me against my will? Fans of the old Assassin's Creed titles have been complaining for a while that the franchise has been chasing industry trends and implementing whatever new mechanics seem currently popular and like they would sell, even if they're completely rewriting the franchise's identity and losing what made it unique. One of the reasons why Assassin's Creed was never an RPG before Odyssey is because history and genetic memory are crucial parts of the game. You have to have kids to make genetic memory happen and to pass on your special abilities. But somehow the developers didn't think that maybe forcing gay fans to end up in a straight relationship so they could have kids might not be the most good thing to ever happen. Assassin's Creed loves a good long family tree connecting protagonists of several games as descendants and ancestors, and the creators clearly planned on connecting Odyssey with the game that came before it, Origins. Assassin's Creed as an RPG doesn't really make sense. Odyssey's creative director straight up admitted that the actual canon is represented in the Assassin's Creed Odyssey novel, which means that none of your advertised choices matter in the context of the game canon. Assassin's Creed either shouldn't be an RPG, or Odyssey shouldn't be an Assassin's Creed game. You can just make an ancient Greek RPG without attaching it to a pre-existing franchise, but Ubisoft is only doubling down on this decision to keep making Assassin's Creed RPGs because money. Sure, the new games don't sell as many copies as the old ones did, but who cares about that when you can squeeze more money from a smaller pool of players by implementing microtransactions and chasing industry trends, even if they clash with your own lore and don't give the players what you promised them. Bisexuality as a game mechanic has been profitable since the first Sims, and is still profitable even if it impacts the integrity of your content. Ubisoft are also maybe a smidge cowardly? They could just give us a non-role-playing game with an explicitly bisexual protagonist, in ancient Greece of all places. And it's not like Assassin's Creed has never had LGBT characters before. Black Flag had Anne Bonny and Mary Read, based on real-life bisexual pirates who dressed as men to be allowed on ships and were in a relationship with each other. Assassin's Creed Brotherhood had the gay Leonardo da Vinci, whose remark about "women provide little distraction" confuses the himbo straight character. Assassin's Creed Syndicate has a trans man. But all of these characters are NPCs, and Ubisoft probably thought that having a canonically bisexual protagonist would be too controversial with homophobic gamers who don't want to see themselves as bi. So instead, they just made the Odyssey protagonists mechanically bisexual. They gave you the gay button. This really shows how disingenuous this kind of bisexual representation is. Mechanical bisexuality was shoved into a franchise that was not designed to be an RPG, because developers thought it would make them money. People weren't mad because their mechanically bisexual protagonist was forced into a straight partnership. They were mad because they used a mechanically bisexual character to roleplay a gay character. In their version of the game, the character wasn't bi. They were gay. And that's another awkward thing about mechanical bisexuality, how thoroughly bisexuality itself is erased from both gay and straight versions of these mechanically bisexual characters. It's not just Stardew Valley tailoring them to be either gay or straight depending on your gender. Games ranging from big AAA titles to rubbish phone games use the same tactic. This delightful episode game about being on a dating reality TV show lets you choose either male or female love interests, but if you start going on dates with women, they suddenly become lesbians, even though they're on a mainstream straight dating show. Game developers are catering to two different demographics here, two different and distinct fantasies. And there really isn't a place for bisexuals in gay or straight fantasies. Well, straight men like to see boobies touch other boobies, and we'll get back to that later, but outside of fetishistic reasons, don't nobody want to date bisexuals? Is there really a place for us in monosexual stories and monosexual fantasies? Even if these games use bisexual mechanics to make gay or straight NPCs, the player character still has the potential to be bi, right? Sebastian and Abigail might not be bisexual, but you can romance them both and live out your goth bisexual farm gay millennial 8-bit fantasy. I mean, yeah, you can. Romance in Stardew Valley works by increasing the number of hearts you have with a certain character, and more hearts unlock special cutscenes. You increase the number of hearts a little bit by talking to the characters, but where it's really at is giving them their favourite gifts. If you give them a gift they hate, you will lose hearts, but giving them gifts they love will let you romance them faster. Leia loves salad. Here's me, standing outside her house every day, waiting for her to come outside, so I can feed her a salad the size of my own head, until she falls in love with me. She has no choice but to fall in love with me. But there's a catch. Once you max out all your 8 hearts with a character, you need to give them a bouquet that will signal to them you're interested in being more than just friends. Then you get the 2 extra hearts you need to max out before being able to propose and get married. And you can only marry one person at a time. However, if you court all 6 bachelors or all 6 bachelorettes to the point of maxing out the 10 hearts without proposing to any of them, the game is programmed to slut-shame you. Your lovers will collectively call you out in a Jerry Springer cutscene and then refuse to talk to you for a week. If you try to suggest that non-monogamy is a lifestyle choice, they'll protest that it's not a choice if they didn't know about it. I definitely agree that consent is vital to non-monogamy. I agree, these pixelated sprites are right. I just didn't expect to get shamed for my lifestyle choices by the cute farm game. I thought this was about, like, wish fulfillment. I don't know about you, but my gay millennial pandemic fantasy always involved a little bit of farmhouse polyamory. Monogamy is literally the only option Stardew Valley even considers. The characters are angry because you didn't talk to them about it, but the game never even gives you a chance to do that. If you try to roleplay polyamory, Stardew will give you a slap on the wrist, call you gross, and tell you that's not how we do things out in the country. I mean, I guess you don't have to date everyone in the village at the same time, but since there's no innate sexuality to your character, sexuality is not who you are, it's who you do. It's what you do. Well, it's who you do. It's who you do. In Fable, your sexual orientation is actually stated on the character's info screen. You start with your sexuality as unknown. If you marry a woman, your sexuality status changes to heterosexual. If you marry a man, it changes to gay. And only if you marry a woman after marrying a man, or vice versa, will you become a fully fledged bisexual. You literally have to divorce your spouse, even if you like them, and marry someone else for the game to recognize you as bisexual. The original Sims game would set the sexual orientation of your character over time. Not all your Sims were necessarily bisexual, but they could become straight, gay, or bi if the user is careful to have them behave sufficiently bisexual over the course of the game. After a while, the game will then have the characters behave according to the orientations it thinks you want them to have. Like, if I only encourage my sim to flirt with men, she'll become inclined towards flirting with men and be effectively straight. To be bisexual, you have to act bisexually, and the only way to do that is to romance 2 different characters of different genders, and that often has implications of non-monogamy, or at least serial monogamy. But most games are not programmed to accommodate that and often actively discourage or penalise it. I tried to see if I could play Life is Strange bisexually, kissing both the male and female romance options, and I was able to. But then the game gave my character a nightmare about how she's a guilt-ridden hoe bag who's leading the both on.
Max is trying to play us both. Guess she's not as innocent as she acts.
You can romance both Kaidan and Liara in Mass Effect 1 at the same time, but only if you're being sneaky about it. They both ask you if you have feelings for the other one, and if you say you do, they'll stop pursuing you. The only way to romance both of them is to keep your other relationship secret. If you do that, Kaidan gets jelly, confronts you, and demands you make a choice and pick one of them.
I didn't realize that you were that you prefer other women.
I am not exactly a woman, Lieutenant.
He thinks your attraction to Liara means you actually prefer women. If you suggest polyamory, Kaidan gets so offended, he breaks up with you on the spot and storms out, which, fair enough, he's monogamous, whatever, but again, the only way to play this game bisexually is to be a cheater and hurt your partners, and while you can bring up non-monogamy, you only have that option once you've been caught cheating and the NPCs categorically shut it down. So Kaidan is out of the picture because he can't handle you being bi and poly. You tried to choose non-monogamy and instead the game chose Liara for you, and you think, okay, the blue non-binary bisexual alien from the future will be down with this. But instead, Liara explains to you that despite rumours of Asari promiscuity, they actually take the sacred bond of monogamy very seriously, which is why she's a 100-year-old virgin. So non-monogamy isn't even a hypothetical option for you to fantasize about. In Stardew Valley, you can at least get a divorce, and in theory, you can date all the characters monogamously, marry them and divorce them before moving on to another, but your exes will hate you. It's so sad. This chick left me and our baby, and now she won't even visit. How's little big baby gonna grow up without a mom? Well, I guess she had 2 moms to begin with, so there's a backup. And some games, like Skyrim, don't even have divorce. So if you marry a strong butch warrior woman and then discover you don't actually like the game, turning her into a housewife who now exists only to cook for you and give you half her money, too bad. There's nothing you can do about it. And also you can forget about that gorgeous boyfriend you were planning on going after. Though of course in Skyrim you don't really date anyone anyway, you just sort of jump from complete stranger to spouse.
Is there something I can do for you? You have a kind heart. I'd be honored to walk by your side.
The Sims 3 doesn't mechanically prevent you from romancing several characters at once, but you will get a reputation for doing it. For example, the game gives you the cheater reputation if you're caught being non-monogamous by other characters, and if you don't get caught, your reputation can be naughty, manipulative, or Casanova, depending on how many people you're romancing at the same time. To make things worse, the game will shade you even if you're just practicing serial monogamy and you never date more than one person at the same time, by calling you a player or a Don Juan or a man-eater. The only way to get the faithful reputation is to only have one relationship in your Sim's entire life. This episode mobile game about finding love on a reality TV show first assumed I was probably straight and would give me mostly guys to date, but would also tentatively offer me one woman in each selection. After I picked the women a few times because all the guys were... it decided I actually prefer women and the gender ratios changed. I only picked a guy once, and the game actually sent me on a bisexual double date with a man and a woman, but they ruined it by being pissy and jealous of each other the whole time, and at the end of the day I had to pick one and the other one got eliminated from the show. It did give me a chance to switch back to him at the last minute at the very end of the game, but I think whoever I chose I would have to monogamously marry. On the other hand, games actively reward monogamy. If you're married in Stardew Valley, your dead grandpa's ghost will judge your farm more positively and will be more likely to give you a statue that produces the rarest ore in the game. It makes sense when you're playing it. In The Sims, you get to move into your spouse's house, and in Skyrim, your spouse is literally a free money dispenser. These games are meant to, in a way, fulfill your fantasies. Especially in games like Skyrim, where you can murder someone just because you don't like their tone and get married so you can get free money from your spouse. It seems like an awfully strange moral high ground to suddenly be like, you better be monogamous, you little slut. Even a game like Fallout 4, which was praised for letting you live your best post-apocalyptic bisexual polyamorous life, really wasn't designed for that. You start the game in the year 2077, and you get to pick which spouse you want to play as, the military husband or the stay-at-home wife with a law degree. You customize your characters, and then the world ends. You get rushed into a bunker and get tricked into being cryogenically frozen. Your spouse gets killed and your baby kidnapped, and you wake up 200 years later to find the planet now looks like the inside of my cat's litter box. You meet several people who you can recruit as your companions and who you can romance, and the game lets you romance them regardless of gender and regardless of whether you're already in a relationship with any of the other companions, which is what people praised as polyamory. But here's the thing. If you flirt with a new person in front of your honey, they will not be happy about it. They won't leave you. And if they don't see your other relationships happening, they won't say anything, and the game doesn't mechanically prevent you from being in a relationship with every single romanceable character at the same time. But it's hardly polyamory. Your boyfriends and girlfriends don't like you flirting with others, and your partners never talk to each other. Despite polyamory and bisexuality allegedly being normalized enough in this world that the game lets you do it, no one else does it. There are no other gay couples or polyamorous relationships, and the people who are bi and poly are only bi and poly for you. I mean, I guess it's not completely true that you're the only queer person in the game. If you take your time and look around while you're running from the nuclear apocalypse, there are 2 women touching each other in your neighborhood, so obviously lesbians. But like everyone else, they're obliterated and dead a few minutes later. Hashtag representation. This game is so fixed on a particular idea of who you are as a character that even choosing to switch from the default male to female feels kind of wrong. The missions and the way the other characters treat you as if you're some kind of badass soldier makes sense if you play as the husband with the military background, but I'm a stay-at-home mom with a law degree. What do you want me to do, send the Ravagers a cease and desist letter? The romance gives a similar impression. They technically give you the option to make your own character and do whatever you want, including be bi and poly, but like, they start you out in this extremely conservative heterosexual nuclear, no pun intended, family. That man is not part of my gay millennial pandemic fantasy, thank you. With a game like this, it will always feel like the writers had a particular path in mind for you, in this case as a straight monogamous man, and you have permission to stray from the path, but no matter how much you do, you'll always remain in sight of it. So while you can technically play these games bisexually, it can feel like you're playing against the game. It's a game mechanic, not an actual sexual orientation or a player style, and a lot of that is tied into monogamy. If you want for games like Fable and The Sims to read you as bisexual, or even if you just want to feel like you're role-playing a bisexual character, usually the only way to do that is to play non-monogamously. But even with the games that let you do that, you have to deal with the implications or the consequences of cheating. The whole model of sexuality as a choice is something that's kind of unique to games, and also has some interesting political implications depending on how you choose to interpret it, and depending on your queer politics. For many gay rights activists, for example, the implication that sexuality is merely a choice gives credibility to arguments that if homosexuality is optional, then individuals can opt out of that activity. By contrast, some might applaud the choice, as to suggest that anybody is innately sexualized or gendered is essentialist and reductionist, and the products of social, cultural, and historical conditioning rather than biological structure. And when it comes to real-life implications this system has about bisexuality, forcing you to establish your bisexuality by being non-monogamous and then calling you a cheater feels awfully familiar, as does using bisexuality as a marketing ploy while insisting bisexuals don't exist. Bisexuality isn't inherently non-monogamous, but if you require non-monogamy as a representation of bisexuality, but you also condemn non-monogamy, then you're using a moral argument against non-monogamy to reinforce monosexuality as the standard and condemn bisexuality. But of course, sexuality as a choice is not the only way video games portray bisexuality.
A new role-playing video game that is leaving nothing to the imagination. Mass Effect is what it's called. It's made for Microsoft's Xbox system, and it features in some parts of this, you'll see full digital nudity.
Who can argue, possibly, that, Luke Skywalker meets Debbie Does Dallas is a good thing? It's not. It's just not good. And I'm definitely not going to let Mass Effect in my house.
The Mass Effect and Dragon Age series from BioWare have had a huge impact on bringing equal opportunity romancing and gaming to the mainstream. These series use systems in which each NPC has their own sexual orientation. Rather than letting the player romance whoever they want, the player has to align with the orientation of the NPC. For example, Steve Cortez in Mass Effect 3 is gay, so you have to play as a man to romance him. Zevran from Dragon Age is bi, so you can romance him regardless of your gender. This establishes sexual orientation as a social system in this universe, but you often won't actually know which characters are bisexual unless you replay the game as a different gender and try to romance everyone again to see how it works. In your first playthrough, you usually only know which characters are into your gender, and you won't know if they're bi. Anders, who previously indicated he was only interested in finding a pretty girl in Dragon Age Origins DLC, becomes a major flirt regardless of gender in Dragon Age 2. However, if you romance him as a man, he tells you about an ex-boyfriend, Carl, but if you romance him as a woman, he doesn't mention it. So to some players, Anders comes across as straight, which knowing how a lot of straight women feel about bi men, I think there's a reason for that. They want you to be able to avoid his bisexuality if that's what you want. Kaidan Alenko of the Mass Effect series was only romanceable by a female Shepard up until Mass Effect 3, where he suddenly becomes bi, but his bisexuality is only apparent to a male Shepard, and a female Shepard won't hear about it. Though sometimes these games have some really great stuff. Zevran is openly bi in the first Dragon Age. He tells you explicitly that his sexual history hasn't been restricted to women, which is so exciting and so awesome. However, according to a live stream with the creators of the game, Zevran and possibly also the bisexual Liliana were written as gay and made bisexual for the sake of having more love interests available for straight players. In the final game, he'll tell both male and female players that he's enjoyed both men and women, but prefers women. You're given the option to tell him his sexuality makes you uncomfortable. This exchange is the most explicit conversation about bisexuality in all the BioWare games. These types of games also usually offer fewer options for same-sex romance. Greedfall and Dragon Age Origins both have 4 romance options, any of which can be romanced heterosexually, but only 2 of which are interested in gay relationships. Giving romanceable NPCs sexual orientation seems like it's kind of a compromise between mechanical bisexuality and just having a canonically bisexual character. But usually these guys still work in the same way as other mechanically bisexual characters. The only difference is that now a lot of the NPCs are straight and occasionally some are gay. It does, however, make more sense than Stardew Valley, where homophobia exists and at the same time, everyone's gay. But romanceable characters aren't the only way to show sexuality and show how a game's world conceptualizes sexual orientation. The Outer Worlds is a retrofuturistic game set in a planetary system that has been colonized by companies from Earth. This game realizes Jeff Bezos' dream of owning everything and everyone. Hurting yourself is considered vandalism because your body is basically company property, and democracy doesn't exist because instead of MPs and mayors, you have stakeholders and town managers. The first companion you recruit is Parvati, a bi-asexual engineer written by a bi-asexual writer, Kate Dollarhide. You can't romance anyone in the Outer Worlds, but you get to play wingman to Parvati, who falls hard for Outpost Captain Junlei. Giving us a queer romance that isn't for the player, but is instead a side mission for these 2 nerds is a nice move because it makes it feel less optional. It's not something you only do if you're seeking out this kind of relationship for yourself, especially because Parvati is a fan favorite character and everyone wants to make her happy. So of course you'll spend ages traveling around the planetary system, listening to her gushing, giving her advice and helping her set up everything for her perfect date. Unless you just kill them. Despite the hyper-capitalist dystopia that she lives in, no one bats an eye at Parvati's queer romance. No one cares about LGBT stuff in this game. Racism doesn't exist. Sexism doesn't exist. The only axis of oppression is class. This was a conscious choice on the creators' part because they wanted to ensure that everyone could have a good time without getting hate crimed by the game. When Parvati comes out to you as asexual or tells you that she likes a lady, you can't tell her her sexuality makes you uncomfortable. There aren't any bigoted replies for the player to choose from because the writer didn't want for asexuals or any LGBT people to have to see them. Characters use gender-neutral language when asking each other about romance, and television programs in the game seem to be kind of bisexual as well. This, on the one hand, creates a world that feels very queer without giving the player any romance options and without a chance to make the world less queer. On the other hand, it also creates a bleak future of rainbow capitalism where identity politics have done their job and there's no homophobia, where girl boss lady scientists are just as empowered as men to use prisoners as lab rats in their secret government-funded experiments. Most of the women in the game look like lesbians, clothes are gender neutral, and men can be as effeminate as they want because fuck gender roles. But if you get sick, your boss won't let you take time off or give you any medicine because clearly you only got sick because your mind is poisoned by nonsense and you need work to strengthen your spirit. The Outer Worlds is a game that clearly thought about how sexual orientation and gender and race and class work in their world and gives us a cohesive universe where how they portray love and sexuality makes sense. This is a fully fleshed out social system that considers not just its players but also its lore, and even though the date quest is optional, it's less hidden behind a gay button. But you know what, having said all this, it's not totally clear that Parvati is bi and not gay, is it? Wonder where I got that idea from. Bisexuality as a video game mechanic means that in-game sexuality will mold to you as a player, whether that means the playable protagonist or the NPCs. But what about the characters who are bisexual regardless of the player's actions? When is a character canonically bisexual? When is their bisexuality an absolute truth of the character? It's much easier to conclude in certain other mediums. Is the bisexual main character of the TV show The Bisexual, who identifies as bisexual, bisexual? Probably, yeah. In video games, I would say it's when the character is indicated to be bisexual regardless of player choices. Leia is mechanically bi, but not canonically bi. Unlike with mechanical bisexuality, canonical bisexuals would have to be bi no matter what the player does or wants. So we're now talking about what I would call Twitter canon, or twanon. Twitter canon primarily includes characters who are subtly, vaguely or subtextually bi in the game, but just unclear enough that the creators have to officially confirm it in interviews or via social media. We've all seen how J.K. Rowling weirdly expands her Harry Potter universe by making random tweets about the Wizarding World, which pretty much no one has ever considered to be canonical. Rowling classically outed Dumbledore in a Q&A rather than in the novels. Is it really canon if it's not in the work? Rather than get into the complexities of death of the author literary theory, let's look at some video game examples. Subtext in Assassin's Creed Syndicate has led fans to speculate that Jacob Frye might be bisexual. So someone messaged Ubisoft Germany asking if he was bi, and a random employee at Ubisoft Germany was like, no. So then people were freaking out on Tumblr, and then what is possibly the Assassin's Creed official Tumblr account confirmed that yeah, he's bi, but is that even a real Tumblr? And then finally in a podcast interview, the lead writer said that yeah, he actually intended for that gay kiss to be a little bit reciprocated. That's what I call Twitter canon. Representation, yay! Another Twitter canon character is Javier Garcia from The Walking Dead by Telltale, who has a romance with a woman and like a moment with a dude. The writer of that scene later confirmed that Javier is bisexual and also seemingly came out as bi himself. This seems to happen a lot actually with Twitter canon, that the writer is bi and they genuinely wrote the character as bi, it's just that non-canon media is the only place it's properly confirmed. Parvati's writer is also bi and ace and has discussed this about Parvati in interviews, which tends to be considered the canon, though I could totally see how to the player Parvati could be considered either bi or gay. Om Nom from the mobile game Cut the Rope is a green blob that eats candy? The writers have confirmed he's bisexual, which made a lot of people happy, especially with the game company being from Russia, so finally some good bi-Russian representation. The raccoon detective protagonist of Backbone was also outed on Twitter, and the writers said they now have to un-JK Rowling him and actually make him canonically bisexual. So how do you un-JK Rowling a character? Level them up from Twitter canon and make them explicitly, unambiguously, canonically bisexual? Game developers are much more likely to call their characters bi in interviews than in the actual games themselves. Using the word bi is not everything, it's not the end-all be-all of representation, but games do tend to avoid the word bi like the plague, just like real life. Curtis in Phantasmagoria 2, A Puzzle of Flesh is the first ever queer player character in video games, and his bisexuality was fairly explicit. This horror office romance involves his girlfriend and his crush on his gay best friend. Showing characters being attracted to or having experience with people of different genders is probably the most common way of depicting canonical video game bisexuals, but can leave the characters vulnerable to erasure when they don't just use the word bi. Fragments of Him was interpreted as a game about a gay man by many, until the bisexual game writer spoke up and said this is obviously bi, which to me, it feels obviously bi too. This tends to be less of a problem if the characters openly discuss their sexuality. Night in the Woods and Life is Strange 2 both have characters who openly discuss their sexuality in a contemporary context. Liara in Mass Effect explains that her species don't have gender, so their attraction and mating rituals are never limited by it.
Male and female have no real meaning for us.
This was definitely done for gay rights reasons and totally not for straight guys to jerk off to.
Young males have an unhealthy obsession with my species.
Some characters won't tell you about their sexuality or their relationships, but the game still communicates their bisexuality either through what other characters tell you about them, or through books, computer logs, letters, and other lore materials in the game. Vivek is a god in the Elder Scrolls games. He has a whole city named after him, and he's worshipped as the symbol of duality, so of course he's bisexual. He is also both male and female, and of two different elf races literally split down the middle. But we learn about all this through books in the game. Games also sometimes use character stats to show orientation, along with the character's health and inventory and so on, such as in Fable. RimWorld assigns your character's sexualities unless they're straight, which is the default. Any other sexual orientation becomes a trait of the character and influences how they engage with other characters romantically. Indie games seem to use the B word more often, and there are a couple of small games that actually dare to use the dreaded label. One of them is Coming Out Simulator 2014, a semi-autobiographical game about coming out as bi. It's free and very short, you should go play it. This is also probably the only game we played that discusses biphobia. Some games will explore homophobia as a societal issue, but you'll never see biphobia being treated the same way. If you find biphobia in games, it's normally because they're just straight up being biphobic. Bisexuality usually isn't even considered as an option, let alone being taken seriously enough to acknowledge the prejudice bisexuals face. So it's nice to see bisexual game creators doing that. Another free indie game that uses the word bisexual is Butterfly Soup, which the author described as a visual novel about gay Asian girls playing baseball and falling in love, and it does exactly what it says on the tin. One of the girls, Akasha, is bisexual and not shy about it. She calls herself bisexual and makes bi jokes. So on the one hand, we have mechanical bisexuality where sexuality molds to the player. And on the other hand, for a character to be canonically bisexual here at Verily Bitchy, we would give them the following criteria. They have to experience bi attraction, so regardless of gender, regardless of whether you romance them, so even if you don't romance the character, you don't make them bi, you don't make them not bi. It's clear in a single playthrough, so regardless of your player character's gender or other characteristics. And Twitter canon doesn't count. Looking at these definitions and at the patterns of exploiting mechanical bisexuality for profit, while also pandering to homophobes and biphobes, canonical bisexuality really seems bolder and more subversive. Like, that really seems like the right way to do bisexuality in games. I've just been given a list of more canonical bisexuals, undoubtedly to prove how right I am about this. Trevor Phillips is a playable character from Grand Theft Auto 5. He is a sociopath who defines his relationship status as any hole's a goal, makes comments at both men and women, uses sexual threats to make men uncomfortable, and carves a hole into a teddy bear so he can it. He's extremely violent and unpredictable, with murder outbursts, and the game even implies that he eats people. Okay, well, let's see if there are any others. Eddie Lowe, also from Grand Theft Auto 5, is described by TV Tropes as easily one of the creepiest characters one will ever find in a video game. You can deduce just by talking with him that he is and a serial killer who horribly manipulates and both boys and girls for sexual pleasure. So it's no surprise later on when he randomly tries to kill you. I'm sure there's something else. Dead Rising 3 has Dylan Fuentes, who kidnaps men and women and holds them in an themed dungeon. When Nick Ramos shows up, Dylan expresses a desire to make him a as well. Okay, well, what about women? Girls are nice. Girls are sweet. Sugar and spice. So Dead Rising has a corrupt female cop, Joe Slade, who kidnaps women and tortures and them. When Frank West confronts her, she threatens to him too. Okay, I think we've seen enough. I guess at this point we can conclude that it's maybe not as easy as mechanical bisexuality being pandering and exploitative and canonical bisexuality being a shining beacon of good representation trademark. If canonical bisexuality can be either bi-positive or biphobic, is it possible that there are any games out there that do mechanical bisexuality right? So far we've only talked about mechanically bisexual romanceable characters, but that's not the only type of mechanical bisexual NPC. Sometimes side characters are attracted to you and will flirt with you or compliment you regardless of your gender, but you can't romance them or even necessarily return the compliment. It's just a part of their cheeky banter. Axton from Borderlands 2 is an example of that. Even though his bisexuality actually started out as a coding error, he had two types of voice lines recorded based on the gender of the person he was talking to.
Wow, you work out?
He was supposed to flirt with the ladies and not flirt with the gents. However, due to a technical error, In the final version of the game, the men's lines are never used and he flirts with everyone regardless of their gender, making him mechanically bisexual but not romanceable. The writers ended up embracing his accidental bisexuality and making him canonically bisexual in a DLC. In the same game, Mr. Torg tells you you're very attractive regardless of your gender.
I just realized this is the first time we've met in person. You are very attractive!
Similarly, many fans interpret Isabelle from Animal Crossing New Leaf as bisexual since she seems to have a crush on the player regardless of what gender you play as. Isabelle's a freak. She's ready for you. These mechanically bisexual characters are potentially more subversive than romanceable characters because the romanceable ones, usually as a rule, their same-sex attraction is only revealed if you pursue them in a gay way. And really, that's the entire function, otherwise they remain painfully heterosexual and make queer content entirely avoidable. Whereas with non-romanceable characters, they are inevitably going to be queer for some of the players. Mr. Torg is always going to read as queer to male players and Isabelle to female ones, regardless of whether or not they're seeking out gay content. So mechanical bisexuality can still have its benefits. It's a fun addition and might serve to establish a character's flirtatious personality and their relationship with you, but it's not there to serve you. It's there to characterize them. Here is what bisexual lead writer Anthony Birch said about Mr. Torg flirting with you.
The goal with him was always to kind of like give him that macho man exterior, but then make everything about his actual philosophies and personality very progressive and nice.
I like that.
Torg flirting with you is there to bring out his personality. It's not there for your titillation. It's there to characterize him. That also represents a nice contrast to characters who are mechanically bi just to be available to you, especially if the romance mechanism is basically give them things till they love you, or tell them what they want to hear until they love you. Dating sims and romance mechanics are sometimes criticized for commodifying the seemingly uncommodifiable love and intimacy. And non-romanceable mechanically bi NPCs are a welcome break from that, since they're bisexual for themselves, for characterization, for the world building, not for you. They still suffer from the same drawback of you basically won't know they're bi unless you replay the game as a different gender or read about it online, but at least they don't hold back their queerness and their bisexuality doesn't exist for the player's consumption. When it comes to mechanically bisexual romance, we criticize games for basically making it hard for you to play bisexually, usually by reinforcing monogamy and not even considering bisexuality as a sexual orientation or a playstyle. Luckily, there are a few exceptions which have taken bisexuality into account. These games don't just use it to offer players monosexual dating options, they actually let you opt into not just gayness, but explicitly bisexuality. Fallout New Vegas lets you take what are basically a gay and a straight perk. It's like bisexuality as a violence mechanic, but also a little bit of romance. For example, if you play as a woman, you get the Ches La Femme perk? Was that Italian or some shit? This is for dealing extra damage to other women, but also it gives you unique dialogue options with women which you don't get otherwise, such as flirting, getting items for free, or finding out a character is bisexual, so gay perk. Then you can also get the Black Widow perk, which allows you to hurt men more, as well as giving you unique dialogue options with men. So if you don't take either of these perks, you're asexual. If you take one, you're either gay or straight. And because they're not mutually exclusive, you can take both and make yourself officially, explicitly bisexual. Of course, in order to be bisexual in this way, you have to spend more perk points than a straight or gay character would, but somehow that feels realistic. Hades bypasses the whole monogamy issue by having polyamory built into the game, and not just the don't ask don't tell version of Fallout 4. In Hades, you can romance both Megara and Thanatos after beating the crap out of them. However, if you romance both, you find that they get some agency over the situation and decide to arrange a three-way. Unlike other games where characters you've been romancing confront you together, this is actually meant to be a good thing, and you don't have to sacrifice any relationships. Demi Lovato's cash grab mobile game Path to Fame just straight up asks you at the beginning of the game if you prefer women, men, or if you don't care. I said I don't care, and it immediately assigned me a clingy ex-boyfriend, and later on a sleazy male love interest who kissed me even though I didn't pursue him. But hey, it also gave me a guitarist female love interest. There's 3 seasons of this really great game, so I might even get more gender diverse romance options in season 2 and 3, but oh no, we'll never know, I dropped my phone in the toilet, oh that's so sad. Dream Daddy, a game about men dating men, lets you choose your deceased spouse's gender. You can only romance men in the game, but by saying your former spouse was a woman, you're making your character bisexual. It doesn't serve any narrative purpose except letting you create an explicitly bisexual character. Luckily, all of their husbands and wives are dead too. This is really great for my virtual sex life. And of course, mechanical bisexuality and canonical bisexuality aren't mutually exclusive. Characters that are mechanically bisexual and can be romanced by anyone don't have to hide their bisexuality behind a gay button and can be open about it like Zevran in Dragon Age. There may be no right way to do things, and to be honest, the right way to do representation is often the most boring. Neither mechanical nor canonical bisexuality are inherently good or bad, they're just two different ways of portraying bisexuality in video games. Both of them can be incredibly biphobic because they tend to use bisexuality to prioritize homophobic players while simultaneously pandering to gay players and completely ignoring bisexual players. They use fictional bisexuality for a profit motive while erasing bisexuality as an important lived experience. The games that manage to avoid that are usually made by bisexual writers, and writers who keep bisexuals in mind while imagining their potential audience. They're writers who don't equate bisexuality with non-monogamy, don't equate non-monogamy with moral corruption, and who don't put a profit motive over the integrity of their work. Stonewall was 1969. 1972 saw the release of the game Pong. Coincidence? Yeah, no, it's unrelated. Video games are as old as the modern era of gay rights. It's a new medium and a new age for how we see sexuality. The technology we've developed in the last few decades to play them is incredible. What will the world of gaming look like 20 years from now? I think romancing systems will continue to evolve and find mechanics we haven't even imagined yet. I mean, just like a boyfriend dungeon. You can be bi and poly by dating your weapons. You just never know what they're going to come up with next. And for every big greedy studio exploiting bisexuality to make money off homophobes and biphobes, there are a dozen small indie creators experimenting and innovating or just having fun making the type of content they want to see. What would gaming look like without the profit motive? What would the creative integrity of gaming look like? And I know we're inclined to think capitalism is the only system which can produce this kind of work. But look at smaller indie games like Fragments of Him, Coming Out Simulator, Bi People, and all the mods for making your existing games more gay, more bi. People are creative, and you can't stop people creating. A lot of the content which includes bisexuals in a meaningful way is work written by people who are a part of our communities. The Sims romance code was written by a gay man. Jacob from Assassin's Creed was written by a gay man. Parvati from The Outer Worlds was written by a bi person. The bisexuals in Borderlands were written by a bi person. The Walking Dead scene with Javier was written by a bi person. We want to write about our communities. And you know, Stardew Valley was made by one guy. It's an amazing game, and it was made by one person and went on to win Breakthrough Award of the Year and sell tens of millions of copies worldwide. You don't need a big greedy corporation to make an amazing game. You just need passion and a vision. I grew up playing The Sims, a game which blew up in large part because of a happy accident in front of the press. But it'll take a lot more than just happy accidents to make authentic bi content. As technology advances and becomes more accessible, I think we're going to find amazing new games on the horizon. And I so very much look forward to what comes next. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing and maybe hitting the little bell too. Thank you to Vanya and Lan for your game footage. And thank you to all my patrons, and a special thanks to Kat R, Danny Aidenstone, Hannah Acker, Siobhan, Aaron, AJ, Apathetic Gaiety, Eric Parkinson, B, Beslav, Beth Hershey, Bipartisan, Charis Edwards, Daria, Dweebin, ES, Irienby, Fafa Elania, Felixer of Life, Gavin Salmon, Hackneyed Edits, Juicy Fantasy Queen Plant Hookups, Jules, Juliana C, Julius, Kale, Kate and Jess, Kisa, Lacey Cox, Lillian Brink, Lord Asriel, Marla, Miss Mad, Nico, Nick Snary, Nina, Oddbjorn the Frizzy, Olive, Pregnant Seinfeld, Rebecca Peacock, River Haddock, Rock the Shell, Ryan Peters, St. Laura, Samson Lopez, Sarah R, Savrad Musin, Sawyer Donk, Shaved Headed By, Sithvich, Soy, Spaghetti Rabbit, Steve, Straw Fox, Susie S, Svipol the Trans Boy Valkyrie, The Children of Jack Acid, Tia Till, Tina Gigya, Troy Zayer, Verlux, Vince Whitaker, and Will O'Connor.